Hi, this is JP Newman with Investing on Purpose. And boy, what a fun episode we are going to have today. I have met a new friend, a fast friend. It is crazy being in New York City. Please meet Philip Michael. Philip, it is like we've been talking away. I wish we recorded half the things we said. And I know today we're really going to go through your story. And I love the conversation about how we take unconventional ways to create outsized returns by infusing purpose into our messages. But I want to start before we go right into your story, because your story is just fascinating. And I can't wait to learn more. It makes sense, like we were talking about. But before we even jump there, we were talking a little earlier about manifestation. Mm-hmm. And we were both saying it's kind of crazy. We met at a pretty large conference last week in New York City. We actually met in the men's restroom. Yeah. I admired your shoes, let you know, and apparently I admired mine. And then it turned into like literally, and this was an interesting thing. We were talking for 10 minutes and I said to you, hey, I've got a nonprofit event happening in Dallas, Texas. And we were talking, we both share multifamily real estate as a career. And you said, hell yeah, I'm there. There was no hesitation. You're just like, I'm there. But you had to move a lot of things in your schedule. You got on a plane, you changed your schedule, you came to Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. And I find we were saying more and more, it's interesting that the more we listen to our gut and get out of our head, the energy takes us places very, very quickly, even without words. Because really, we're like learning about each other on the fly, which is so much fun. But it is interesting that as I get older and as I learn to put away my own agenda in my head, I call it the side hustle. When I didn't even know I had a side hustle. It took me a bunch of years to figure out that I had a side hustle. And this side hustle was simply like, what am I going to get out of this relationship? Or what is transactional? Yeah. Whether it's in a relationship with a woman, business, all these things, this networking that we do. But what I found in my life is that when I finally realized I didn't have to do that and I could just trust the universe, which sounds, I know, a little woo-woo, things like this keep happening. And I didn't know what this even means, except I've got a new friend and I'm really excited to share the mic with and learn about you.
Well, thank you, JP. It's a pleasure to be here.
What do you think about manifestation? How does that appear for you?
Well, I like to address one of the things that you said, because when you think about some of the most serendipitous moments we have in life, it's almost as though there are too many variables that just don't make any sense how they come together. It could be how we meet a loved one. It could be how we get an opportunity. You told me off camera about how you got this place here and things like that. It doesn't make any logical sense. I learned long ago that the more control we think we have and the more we can plan things, the more the universe will show you that you're not in control. You can't be in control if you declare what it is that you want, but then you got to get out the way. So that's why when you mention, go, if it feels like I'm flowing on water, I don't question that. I understand I'm just a microcosm, a small piece of a greater.
Have you always been that way since a kid, though, or is that a skill that you learned through time?
Well, I think I just innately understood it. And then at one time, this is going to be interesting. Yes, I understood it. I understood it. There's some stories I can tell for another time, but I think the earliest I can remember is probably when I was maybe very young. I may have been 7 or 8, or I may have been in my teens. I really don't recall. I just innately always had that understanding. But then I watched this documentary. It was a lot of people seen it, The Secret. I was like, oh, that's how I work. That's how that's me. I think a lot of it came from also my dad. He has an optimistic, positive outlook on life. And he has this mentality that he's instilled in me. I would much rather see the best in people and situations and maybe I take a few slaps, a few lumps, get let down from time to time along the way and learn a lesson versus seeing the bad in every place. And then, so that's one of the things in terms of
vulnerability. It's kind of saying I'm willing to be wrong. Sometimes I've lost a couple of times because it keeps me open.
But it's to your point, when you try to take control, when you operate from that place of lack, or it's like, I want this, I need to get something out of this. That's when you really block the inflow of what it is you want in the first place. So when we saw it there, because really what wasn't mentioned is we had a mutual friend who said, you need to meet JP. And he goes, oh, JP was just here. And he said, we kept passing one another. Then we meet in the toilet. And then we get there and we talk. It's like, oh, that's you. Oh, yeah, that's you. We had already connected on a different level than we were supposed to initially. And turns out we had a mutual friend already. And we were already sort of connected that way to begin with. So it's like none of it makes any logical sense, but it makes all the perfect sense.
It does.
Spiritual. Does it make sense?
It totally
Yeah.
makes sense. It's an energy thing.
It's an energy thing. We're all interconnected, and we will always just sort of gravitate to whatever our frequency is at a time. It's like even when you ascend, you may meet people on the way up that are at a constant vibrational frequency or here, and you may outgrow them, or they may outgrow you, who knows, but where your paths cross, and then there's something that's greater when you land on something, so this beautiful high plane of consciousness, and you elevate together. But, now it's starting to sound a little complex. I'm going to let you,
I'll go.
What was it?
Well, let's talk about, wow, like, we met, you are approaching multifamily real estate
Yeah.
from a different angle than I think we're shared hearts, and that we really want to make sure that the residents are being treated, not just
That's for sure.
investors are making great returns.
Yeah.
But why not have the residents be super happy?
Yeah.
And you create outsized returns for your investors because people stay longer, resident retention and what have you. It's very interesting that back to like when you looked at, you really didn't grow up like some people say, I know I'm meant to be a great star. I know I'm meant to be a real estate person.
Yeah.
I know for me, I did not, I wasn't like 8 years old and saying one day I'm going to be a multifamily executive owning apartments. I don't think it sounds like from the story I heard from you that you weren't like destined to be an apartment. I think you really were kind of cruising through some interesting pathways. And ironically, you went from being a journalist, from what you told me.
Yeah.
And from journalism, you working at a mutual friend's real estate newspaper. What got you here? You're young. You're kind of checking things out. You moved out of your country.
Yeah.
In Denmark.
Yeah.
You moved to New York City.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little of your story? Like, how did you get from that into like treating your company nice, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
And kind of the way you think about things.
Yeah. Okay. So it might seem like it's just kind of like my happenstance, but the reason I wanted to get into sport, because my nephew, we're in New Jersey right now, my partner, and he's also my best friend. He's really like my brother.
That's awesome. I saw young pictures of you guys.
Yeah. He was, he signed his first contract as a professional when he was 15. And I was always into sports. I would watch sports. I was like, I could remember every single, pretty much at that time anyway, I can remember, I would know who won every single medal in the Olympics and the World Cup and this. It was just a thing. So I figured I should be a sports writer and get paid to watch sports since I like it so much. And then he got signed to do soccer. I said, hey, okay, you know what? You're going to play. I'm going to be a journalist. I'm going to write nice things about you. And then we always empower each other. He's 7 years younger than me. And then there was this job at the top Danish sports publication. And I hadn't taken journalism classes yet. I was just going to go to school for it. And he said, they have a job there. I didn't want to tell him I can't do it because I can't tell him that. So I go, okay, let me apply. So I applied and I had an interview and I got it. I said, okay. But then I had my first day and I realized this is not for me. I had to pump out 2 articles every hour at a call. It just wasn't for me. So I slowly began to set the wheels in motion for getting into the business side of things. Now, my oldest sister, she's the #1 real estate broker in Denmark. And my father owns apartments also. And he would have me do things.
And your nephew's large. He's not like just kind of a soccer player for me.
No, he's one of the best in the world. Yeah.
You might have left that detail.
Right. Well, but he wasn't in real estate yet, but the two of them were in real estate. And so that's why I know, because he would have me sometimes when he likes to be hands-on with things, when people would move out, he'd have me go clean the stuff. And so that's how I, kind of got an understanding. When I say wealth is a function of conversations around the dinner table, what is the extent of your capacities only from what you see around you? So I know we can own property, and I know it grants us freedom. I don't like the fact that I have to clean up these things that people can work in, but it is what it is. I guess he's teaching me something here. But when I was doing that and I was in journalism school, I started saying, you know what, I want to go the business route, but what skill sets can I use from journalism to get me into it? And then I said, okay, media, I'm a young guy. I don't have any money. I'm in New York. How can I get a network of people? Why would they want to speak with me? Well, if I have a platform, they would want to. So I said, okay, my media skills in sports, let me get it into business world, then real estate, and eventually into owning real estate. So I still use those communication skills that I learned from doing that. I use them today.
That's almost like a sports broadcaster, and where you are now.
Oh yeah.
Now you're just podcasting on different topics. Business, real estate.
In terms of real estate, I'm not that great of an operator. The results will give the impression that I am. That's just my drive, where I will allow no other outcome but the one that's the best for the people. And so you have to kill me to stop me with that. So if you go in with that intent, you're gonna deliver. But it doesn't mean it's something I'm naturally great at. If this is, I wouldn't say I'm top 10 in the world at real estate. But if it comes to, I would say that for something else. Yeah.
You're pretty maybe give it some time. I think you could be top 10 with the energy and vision that you have. Because going back to vision, I'm pretty good at this point at picking out people that are going far. My partner Antonio, you met.
Rock star.
I knew when he was 27 where he was going, and right now he's managing about $2 billion, and he'll be the largest. He'll be one of the top 5 in the United States.
Nice.
I also predict, I'll just say it for the camera, he will be a U.S. senator or congressman.
Okay.
I just know it. I
bookmark it. Yeah.
Like you say, you can look 10 years.
Yep.
I can look 10 years out of this.
Nice.
You're on that path. It's
okay.
Interesting. You heard it here first, folks.
All right.
So go on. I'm sorry. So you basically now you're doing like journalism, and you kind of realize you've come to a point where why not take your skills and bring it into business?
Yes.
So what apartments?
Well, it was because I'll tell you what. So I was, even though a lot of my family is in America, from America, I am a Danish citizen. I was on a student visa that had expired, and my father at the time he owned a nightclub, and he had bought the rights to operate Burger King, which you think is everywhere there, but it was only like a couple places in Denmark. So he had bought the rights to operate that. And I have 2 older sisters that are naturally, and we have different mothers, but both their mother and my mother passed away very young. So all we have is our dad, and they're very, they're daddy's girls.
Right.
I'm my own man. So they're like, come home, do something. It's like, no, I need to do this for myself. And then, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sharing. Okay, I'll share it. He doesn't speak English anyway. They go, well, if you don't come, say come home or else. I said, stick that or else up, you know where. So I said, I'm not coming home. So I was just on my own in New York. And
wow.
Yeah, that's how it happened. And because I
off support, so at this point, you no longer had any support from your family.
None at all. I was by myself. I had less than a homeless person because I didn't have a social security number. I couldn't open a bank account. I couldn't do anything. So I had exactly $79 in a PayPal account, and I would make money from. I had actually told myself I was going to retire from journalism and media in 2011. But then this is 2014, and the only way I could make money was there's this sports publication. I'm not gonna. You can find it if you really want to look for it, but I don't want to mention it. They had this for investigative reporting. They would pay out these prizes every 2 weeks if you would win the best thing, and I would force myself. I have to win this. So I kept winning these, and then I would get paid.
It was like a contest who could write the best article would win.
Yeah. And then what happened was there was another guy who was a former New York State athletic commissioner, and he's a broadcasting legend still is to this day. He had a show on Sirius XM. He's like, who is this kid? How does he figure all this stuff out? Who is this kid? So he invited me on the show, and I was terrified to be on the radio. But he had said, well, I already announced it to people that you were coming. Then I go, well, my defiance, where I'm not going to surrender, is stronger than my embarrassment. So I said, okay, I'll go. And I'm like terrified. Next thing you know, I become a host of the show while I'm making this money. And I go, okay, all right, we're going in the right direction. But to your point, I couldn't do anything. And I thought to myself, so with the $79, I booked 3 nights at a hostel. All this happened. I somehow got to rent a room somewhere. And I told myself, okay, people in New York of wealth and influence seem to be in one place, in property. And also, because I don't exist in the system, I can't find anywhere to live. So I want to have property. I want to have so many apartments that I'm never, ever, ever, ever going to be in a position where I can't find somewhere to live. And that was one thing. And 2, I told myself, because I killed myself to get to the point. And then I told myself, I am never, ever, ever going to work a day in my life unless I want to. So when I told you I got to the point, and that kicked off in July in 2014. And then I started with the media company about a year later. Because of that radio show, there was a guy who had a PR firm that represented a lot of big real estate players in New York. He happened to be a big boxing fan. It was a boxing show. So he loved that. He said, come work with me. We watched the fights together, and we worked together, and this and that and the other. And I wanted to make sure, because I had nothing to fall back on. I said, I need to make sure I'm indispensable. I have my writing skills. So I said, look, you have these different clients that are relatively newsworthy. Let me hit up some financial publications. And I say, hey, I know you guys are doing well, but you're not covering real estate. I can write real estate for free. They said, okay, cool. So I got sources, I got a platform. Here we go. And that's how I ended up with because I would have all these big developers.
That's how you write for business.
That's how I ended up
the biggest real estate.
Yep.
That there is.
And then
a mutual friend of ours.
Exactly. And then look out there. Then the company sold. I got my green card. I got sponsored through a family member, and it took forever. It was hell. And got that. It's now sold, and I bought my very first property all within a 2-week period. And that first property was a three unit building house, if you will. And I figured out you could. At first, my thought process was, oh, this is a fun story. It was, I just need to get a property so I can a condo. I figured if I save up, I knew nothing. If I save up 10,000, I should be able to get a condo for 100,000, which doesn't even make sense. The typical down payment is 20%, but that was in my head. Then someone told me, well, you can actually own it by only putting down 3.5%. I said, really? Off we go. And then I went towards that. I teamed up with a local partner, and then
I thought
exactly 3.5%. And then you have one unit, and then you run out the other two because you have to live. There's a living requirement. Okay, now I have shelter. Now I have an asset. Now I have cash flow. And then that quickly went to.
That's a nice move.
But that's how I went into it. And then the little things I would leverage my skills with from journalism is you cut through the flow. You see what is, get to the point, and you move. And you're not afraid to reach out to people, and this and that is something you learn. So that's probably one of the only things I learned in college is probably those skills. But
the hustle. It's not a bad way, but just like you're gonna figure it out. You're gonna get
that's from life. But that just the whole thing, the communication skills, and then from there, that was the first property, and that's how it sort of ended up there. And then I figured out, wait a minute, if I could do that coming from a sports background, a different country, to this day, I don't know what I couldn't tell you what a square foot is. I think in metrics, centimeters and meters. However, if you show me a spreadsheet with how the square feet tie together to the models, to the numbers and the multiples, well, it's like a computer, but I couldn't tell you what it is. So if I could do that, I know anybody. And plus, here's another thing I haven't told you. I have a brain injury. I have 70% of the brain capacity of the average human being, which is from an accident that happened years ago. So if I with a brain injury in a new country, I don't have less than a homeless person, and I'm just a sports writer. I can do it. Anybody can do it. So,
then you got a government loan when you weren't even a U.S. We were U.S. Oh, that was harder.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. It's not illegal, by the way. I consulted with an attorney.
No, we can end.
But that's what happened. And then off you go. But that's why I'll say, people give me a limitation with whether it's interpersonally, people that I meet on my team. I tried this, but I say, I don't accept that. I said, does your heart beat? Is your heart beating? No excuse. Go for it. It could be a little thing. I asked someone because I was speaking at a conference in Copenhagen a few weeks ago. I said, did you get the pictures? No, I followed up. I said, followed up is not good enough. So I immediately, I was like, harassed them. Get it. Yeah. Because we needed it to post it, for which would benefit them too. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to do this myself. Start hitting them up on every app. Hey, do you have them? I got them inside 5 minutes. I said, see? Like, I don't accept. I just don't accept it.
I noticed twice, right when you met me, we were talking about Investing on Purpose, the podcast, which is a pretty new podcast.
Yeah.
This is episode 21. And you said to me, well, do you want it to be bigger? I'm like, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. The audience is building. And you said, well, let's just do X, Y, and Z. Your mind went right to like manifesting exactly like, and it was really good because it actually stretched out me. It's like you're saying, this is the possibility. I'm like, yeah, but you were kind of stretching me there. And then all of a sudden it was like, again, manifestor to manifestor, but you stretched me. So and again, a stranger kind of jolting me doesn't happen that often, but your energy was infectious and I actually needed it. Because sometimes we're safer. We try to be like extra humble, like maybe I don't deserve this, or maybe it should be harder, or maybe it should be this, or maybe it has to take, like, we have all these like reasons and beliefs that just actually keep us from getting those pictures, becoming, exactly the word, being in your lane of greatness. But I do find it's interesting that sometimes, maybe in a bad way, I do rely on I know I'm a manifestor, but I'm humble. Like, I don't want to brag, or maybe that's be harder, or I don't want to look too flashy. But sometimes that can actually get in the way of your purpose of what you're actually supposed to be doing. So I actually appreciated that jolt from you. It kind of woke me up and saying, know the difference between, you don't want to be a bragger. You don't want to be too, like, it's not about that. But when you're doing something that's coming from true purpose and true intent, then why not just like really just go for it, right?
Well, in terms of being humble, I mean, it sounds good, but it's really just an illusion of your own capacity and what it means, and the perspective and the perception of that perspective. What I mean by that is, you set one number, and the other number that you would like to have, it seemed like, oh my God, that's just because it's rattling the comfort zone. Because the number in retrospect, and which you'll find out soon is not really that significant.
Right.
And one of the things, and did this for me is because, again, going back to, remember we spoke about when you mentioned, maybe we should edit this out, but when you say, hey, you talk to one of your team members, can we get X million here? They said, why not get, 2.3X, whatever it was you said. And then, well, okay then. And to most people, that number would be, oh my God, life-changing, whatever. But in the realm of the assets, when you look at asset money versus personal money and people conflate the two, you realize, well, there's not a lot of asset money, but it's crazy to some people. And when I look at it in terms of asset, if we create that parallel when it comes to media, that number may be a lot of people that you would, let's see, if you were to meet them every day. But in this realm, it's minuscule. So it's all about the perspective. And sometimes we just tell ourselves that because it rattles our perception. I'll tell you what happened for me. So in terms of manifesting, this is a crazy story. So Martin, we had talked about everything we're doing right now. We had talked.
Nephew Martin. So Martin.
Yeah.
Plays for.
He played for FC Barcelona. He just went to another team. I ironically happen to be wearing his jersey right now.
Come on. What? I forget Martin. I'm not a soccer player. Excuse me.
No. He played for Barcelona. Oh, I got to stick into the mic. All right. He played for Barcelona. But here's the thing. There's only been 2 players from Denmark that ever made it to FC Barcelona.
Wow.
Ever. And 2 players. There's one guy, he was really Spanish with a Danish name, but there's 2 guys that made it of any type of significance because Danish players just don't get to those leagues. They plateau different places, but never get to the biggest sports team in the world. Barcelona's the biggest sports team in the world. And also because he was written out so many times and he never was hyped as a big talent. Even for the World Cup in 2018, he wasn't even considered for the squad, for the practice squad. He ended up becoming a starter. That's something we had manifested. I'll tell you the story. When we were younger, he would come to my house and he started seeing I was into the manifesting stuff. And what I would do is, I said, you always got to speak to your subconscious mind because you can lie to yourself. Logically, you can, the mind can be funny. When you're exercising, your mind will tell you, you've done enough. You got to power through that. Yeah. It's your subconscious mind that really is your North Star in terms of wherever you're going. So he would see that I had this thing when I had my brain injury. And this is for a lot of people out there. I tell you guys, a lot of times, if we have a lot of potential, we like to perform just above average in mediocrity, telling ourselves, you know what, if I really tried really hard, I could be great. But in reality, it's just preservation of ego because people don't want to put themselves out there to find out whether what they think of themselves really isn't as true as they thought it was. Maybe I'm not as great as I thought.
Almost like fear of disappointment. So they just don't put it all out there.
It's very profound.
You can't be fully rejected. You can't be fully.
Exactly, because that is crushing to some people, and then unconsciously and subconsciously, that's the biggest fear for a lot of people. Once I had that, and once I had the brain injury, I felt like crap, and I'm like, I can't do things that I could do before, and then I just started, and this is the magical thing that happened with that, is that, well, there's no ego to protect anymore. Just set bold goals. And I started crushing. I was a mediocre student before. I told myself, well, at the time, I was a double major in psychology and journalism, and I was writing this dissertation about, actually, I figured out how you can make it impossible for racism to exist in social context. There's another conversation for another time. And I said, instead of saying, I want to get an A, so A's in Europe is a little different. Here, everybody can get an A. Then you have a level beyond. It's a little rarer. I could never get that. So I changed my goal from, I want to get an A, to, I want to write the best research project of this entire class, how you would say it here. Anybody my age in my class, this is the best. So obviously it was a given that I was going to get an A because I already put a goal that was greater than the vanity goal. And not only did it do that, to this day it's still part of the psychology curriculum over there. I'm not saying this just to brag it. That just tells you this is with diminished capacity. And I didn't care. I let go of the whole thing that kept me back in the first place, was protecting my ego. Anyway, so I started doing these little things. I would put on the wall. I said, how can I rewire these limiting beliefs that exist in my subconscious mind? So I would put up goals, and I would put them, whenever you're like groggy, when you wake up, you have to go pee. So I would put things on the bathroom door. So like I don't even realize they're there, but it speaks to my subconscious mind. And he started putting these goals up. Anyway, so he made this book as his journal, and he said, by this age, I will be at this club. And he signed with his first team in France, and he called me up. He said, you want to see something crazy? Look at the teams that I was going to sign with. And there was the team in France where he met his wife and got his kids. And he later found it again. And he said, by 28, I'm in either one team or FC Barcelona. And it was right there. And he found it all crusty and dusty. Wow. And it was something that happened in I'm getting to a point. I'm sorry if I'm being long-winded here. There was transfers. There's a transfer deadline. With the NBA, you can't make trades after a certain date. So I remember my sister, I'm at another project that we have in Jersey City. My sister goes, have you heard about Barcelona? I think it's a prank because the window of making trades, it's over. It's past the deadline. He said, no. She goes, haha, you're funny. Because she thinks I know because he tells me. Then I ask him, what is this Barcelona thing? I hear nothing from him. So if I go silent or he goes silent, something's cooking.
It's cooking.
Yeah. And which we agreed that we shouldn't do to each other again. But anyways, that happened then. And long story short, there was a provision in some sort of contract that has never been exercised before that they just wrote as a formality. And because there was an injury in Barcelona's team, it allowed them to activate a clause where they could pick one guy. And because he was a certain age, it then allowed him to get there. It was just a whole crazy set of circumstances. And overnight, he goes from having 31,000 followers to 300,000, then 1 million, because now he's a Barcelona star. And now he's playing next to Messi. And Messi had been in his long funk. And Martin came in, they gave him 2 assists, snapped the funk. The next thing you know, he's the hottest thing since sliced bread. And that is the manifestation. And now this is the long-winded point to get me to your point about you now. I then said to him, hey, we're building the Philadelphia project. I need to be able to link in my stories. You need to have 10,000 followers. I just have friends and family on my Instagram at this point. You need to, can you help me get to 10,000? Because I need to be able to promote the listings. We have to put them for rent. My goal then was to lease it out before it was even built. That was like an obsession I had. And then the pandemic hit. It was a different story. But he says to me with a straight face, and we don't doubt each other, even if it's something we don't believe about ourselves, we don't question the other. So he goes, yeah, I can, but you're already there. I said, what do you mean? You're already that person. You don't need me. I said, really? Okay. I immediately called the big team meeting. Immediately. I called the team meeting and I said, hey, guys, prepare. Next week, we'll have 10,000 followers, which means this ABC, XYZ, and we're going to do this and this. They look at me like, I didn't realize they looked at me like I was crazy. But because I said it with such conviction, they go, okay, I guess I can, maybe he has something in his sleeve. Then I did one video and because I saw everybody was panicking from COVID and this and that and the other. And I said, okay, this is the situation we're in. How can I add light to the situation? So I made a video that I knew people would look at. It's called 4 Ways COVID-19 Can Make You Rich. So I said, people in the house, make a blog, start creating content, which is what I did. Or invest in the stock market. It's down for no reason. Time to get in. Own property. So you don't get in a position where, well, whatever I said that, I don't even remember because I haven't even watched it.
Yeah.
1,000 people watched it.
Wow.
Another part.
10,000, so you're 300,000.
Remember I said 10,000?
Yeah.
At 300,000. What was it you said about it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Now,
that's interesting.
Then this other, exactly. Yeah. Then this other page took it 70,000. Next thing you know, people find that this guy, I start looking at my Instagram notifications. Usually it would have 1 comment, 3 followers, this and that, like the typical stuff. Next thing you know, because it says 100, because that's I said, what's happening here? And I didn't understand it. It kept coming. And then Randy calls me. He said, what's going on? I said, what do you mean? What did you do? I said, what do you mean? He said, I don't believe it. So you told me. He's like, you're okay. All right. I said, you're in Barcelona. What are you asking me for? So I get emotional thinking about it. He's like, you told me. You told me. So what are you surprised about? And this goes back to the point. Remember, like, how easily those perceptions can change. And then it went to 10,000. Then suddenly 100,000. And now it's to the point where you start playing with it because you realize you can actually direct this stuff. And I said, okay, now
mastery. That's amazing.
I was like, now I want 1 million views a month for my videos. So I said, we're going to get 1 million views. So what do I need to do it? Well, I need to do 2 videos. I'm averaging around 25,000. So do that and we hit it. And that's what I started. That's what I started doing. As I said, this is what I say to you, JP. I know it took me forever to get there, but perception of the capacity is just really an illusion because I thought 10,000 was a big deal. Smash it. Goes to 100. Oh, then, so that's that.
I want to share with you, I really appreciate, by the way, what you're saying. And kind of on that note, I had a very good friend, very successful, and he has a nonprofit that's really going to do good for the world. It's around soil. It's actually called, well, I won't say the name, but anyways. So he was asking me because, as you know, we had the nonprofit dinner this week that you attended. And he's like, JP, I'm stuck. I can't get to the next level. I feel stuck. I'm stuck at this number.
Yeah.
And he's like, but I know, he knows some of the top celebrities in the world. He's hanging out with like literally the wealthiest people in the world.
Yeah.
But he's like, I've been afraid to ask. So here he is hanging out with some of the wealthiest people who, and by the way, his model, what he stands for could really help change the earth. Really righteous. It's the right thing.
Oh, yeah.
I said, you know what I realized until recently? He said, I didn't think I deserved it. And he says, but he's like, if you actually take the Latin word deserve, you know what deserve means in Latin? To serve. Do I deserve? Because when we think it's about us, we put the limitation. Why can't I? It's what you said earlier. You don't want to put yourself fully out there because, God, what if I'm wrong and I fail? I don't deserve this. But if deserve becomes the Latin root of to serve, and it's not about me anymore, it's about serving a higher purpose or a higher meaning beyond my little old ego. If you could really lean in to what deserving actually, really the root of it actually means, I think it would change a lot of us to exactly what you're talking about.
In terms of what we're thinking here.
Well, if you, instead of it being about you, to your point about numbers and being able to like move things, instead of saying, do I deserve this, which is a really limiting belief because it's about you and your evaluation about yourself. If you use the Latin root to serve, like right now, when you got to 1 million, and we're going to talk about your story, it wasn't about, I got to get 1 million because I'm so great. You started having a higher purpose in mind to serve.
Yeah.
So what your deserving was to serving as opposed to deserving from an eco standpoint.
Yes.
And that might be a really interesting way to start like shape shifting out of this like,
so
because I think our which is really our limiting beliefs, right?
Well, is a way to decouple yourself from it to make the goal seem attainable, or at least be more comfortable with it if you feel as though it's, which I struggle with. There's certain goals I wrestle with it because I think I feel guilty about this goal because I don't need it for vanity and I
I know.
that type of, my father.
That happens to me too,
It happens to you. Yeah. And it's just the way you just got to get over it. And I talk to people, I said, look, I am unconsciously sabotaging certain things about myself for no other reason than the fact that I have some bad beliefs that I need to rewire. So I need you to be on my ass. I told my friends, I need you to be at my, if you see detect any type of things that sabotages or is not in line with who, I always tell people, I want you to see you like I see you. And if you see me in a certain light that I don't see, punk me, shame me. They like to say you shouldn't shame me. Shame the hell out of me. Push me there, please. If you love me, do that, please. That's just what's up. Because again, sometimes we tell ourselves these weird things because we attach it. Again, if it's ego, oh, I'm a dirty, disgusting person. I must be vain. No, I accept it. If I need to impact 100 million people worldwide, that means 100 million people have to hear what I have to say or indirectly hear what I have to say, which means either way, it means I have to speak to many people. So I can forget everything about being shy. Even though I'm a shy person, I can forget everything about that. Get that out the window. It's not about.
I have a confessional for you.
What's that?
So when I met you last week, we were at a pretty interesting conference. We were at New York City.
Yeah, we were.
World leaders.
Yes.
World's biggest problems. Like, I was a little intimidated because these people are like the head of the UN, world leaders, president.
Are you really?
Well, I'll
okay, go for it.
King. So like we're hearing like some top thinkers and people are helping the environment and political leaders. And if you remember, the Ukrainian president was on with President Clinton, which was a conversation. And I realized something that I have a limited belief that really has kept me. And this was exactly what you're saying. Someone said to me, there was another multifamily guy said to me, I decided to retire at 40. And I said, well, why'd you retire at 40? He says, I realized I made so much money that my cup was full.
Oh.
And so he meditates and he's a great guy, good friend of mine and what have you. And he said that to me. I'm like, and somehow I took that in. Oh, when you get to a certain point, you shouldn't be too greedy. You should stop and your cup is full, whatever that number is, by the way. For some people, maybe that's $100,000 net worth or whatever it is. His cup was full. And then so I kind of realized that I was going around life at this point saying, I'm kind of done. My cup is full. And I realized that I was so inspired last week by the leaders and quite frankly, the problems we have on this planet.
Yeah.
From small to big, from people in apartment residents like the Venezuelan family who literally, they were trying to stab his kid because he went against the government, moved into an apartment in the U.S.
Yeah.
To obviously climate and 100 million refugees and what's happening in Ukraine. And I realized wait a second, I'm playing small ball here.
Yeah.
I'm playing small ball because the money, I had the limiting belief that it would be like, it'd be greedy to try to
Greedy
more
almost,
money.
yeah.
Greedy.
Yeah.
Then I'm just wasting. Like,
Yeah.
and is that really my best time? But the framework that I'm sharing, and I'm still in process with this, but the framework was, well, what if I could serve a lot more people? Because here's what I heard. When you hear Malala speak, who we heard speak, everyone had one thing in common. Every world leader, every problem that we heard had one thing in common. It's going to take money to solve the problem.
That's right.
Money. That was the commonality. This shit doesn't get fixed without a lot of money. Education in Afghanistan, winning the war in Ukraine, you name the topic. And then it kind of inspired me. I looked at the belief. Why am I walking around with this belief that my cup is full? When there's so much work to be met, then it's exactly what you were just saying. It's like coming into new numbers and getting out of your comfort zone and saying, wait a second, I need to play bigger. I've been playing in my comfort zone. That notion of my cup is full, it could be, for my friend, that could be very real because he's on a spiritual path now. For me, what it hit me was wake up. There's so much to do on this planet. One person at a time, which I know that we're going to get to your company, NYCE, and your tribe, but it's one person at a time. But if not me, then who? Right?
That's the key question. It's the key question, brother, because once we get out, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about us. There is all these little pieces just floating around, fragmented pieces that belong to the universe. And if you have a gift to do something, you're already doing it. And if you think about it from the selfish point of view, why should one person have 10,000? I mean, just saying something extreme, but then you think about it. If
there's 4 people in the world, what am I doing with all this?
Yes, but then you go, there's a million people that need a place to not only just live, but being treated with dignity. Okay, 10,000? I have a long way to go. If you just to put it in perspective, see, it's not about you. It's not about you. You've been chosen.
Deserve.
Yes.
Deserve.
Yes, you have a unique gift to, number one, one of the things we should always aspire to do, in my opinion, I'm a young guy, but that's something I truly believe, is once we find alignment with our purpose, it is our duty to how can I put it? To not only walk that, but to serve as we all have our unique gifts. And once you find what that is, you have a unique ability to number one, connect with people. You improve lives. You can, in order to it requires money. So to get money, you need the money. You make money for those people that bring the money, so they're happy. You then use that to bring, how can I put it? I want to say joy, like of course, a roof over their heads and so forth, but a type of living that has an undertone of caring. People take, it's just a totally different vibe. When I was at that restaurant, I thought before that, I'm the only one I sometimes question, why am I doing this? Why do I, we have people that own small pieces of it and they're new to it. They don't understand it. And it's a lot of legwork. I said, why do I do this? It's just, I could just sell this whole thing and just live wild life the rest of my life. I never do anything. But there's a bigger purpose. It's not about me, and when I saw that there, and it just reaffirmed, like, wow, this actually can work. So I am eternally grateful for you for that, just for creating that, because let me know I'm on the right path. And just that alone, that'll make me do it more and maybe inspire somebody else. So even what you're doing directly, indirectly, it'll trickle down to other people, right? And that walking in that purpose that you're doing, it is the greatest form of servitude that you can ever imagine. It's not even about you, and it's not even about you, and that's the magical thing about it. I just want to say a second.
And to your point is, like, it starts out with a small little seed of an idea.
Yeah.
And as you know, we had 200 people. We had our first person make $1 million pledge, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And 200 people coming, and then the residents speaking about their experiences, which was super cool.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that you care. Most people again, so the people don't know, real estate is what you consider an alternative asset class. There's public equities, which is the stock market. Then you have private equity, and that's what real estate falls under. Private equity really is very traditional, old school banker, and
make an investor a return.
Exactly.
We're here to make you a return.
That is exactly it. And tenants in private equity real estate they're not the customer. Even though they pay rent to most private equity operators, they're not the customer. They're a means to an end to service their customer, which is their limited partners, their LPs, their investors. So they're just, and you hear that a lot of time where people go, I don't want to say it. You can edit this out if you want to, but I saw this documentary on Netflix, and they had a complaint about the Kushner companies.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah, and they said, and he was right. They said, "Oh, we're this and that is happening in our buildings. We're not hearing from anybody. They're raising the rents, this and that and the other." And he says, and rightfully so, it's a for-profit. The purpose of a for-profit business is to create wealth for your shareholders. And he admitted, he said, "That's what I'm doing. I have to uphold my fiduciary duty to my investors. Ergo, they're a means to an end." And what I noticed, which is what because I don't have LPs, I've funded this ourselves, so I can actually. So one of the things we do is we build fences by the university and Temple University. I build housing where people can have access to funding, create businesses. I want people to come there to create businesses that then create jobs and inspire other people and blah, 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 so on and so forth.
We'll
And I,
get to this, bud.
yeah, we'll get to it.
This will be part 2.
Part 2. But what I'm saying about you is that, like, wow, you guys don't treat them as a means to an end to service your customer, even though the LPs are partners, but they're partners also, because one of the things I forget who said it. Was it you that said it? I think it was you. You said, if we're all here, not because we're great, not because we have some sort of talent, but because
Renters pay rent.
tenants pay rent.
Renters pay rent.
Exactly.
All these people in the title companies and these brokers were living these big lives.
Talk about it.
Well, I mean,
How'd you come to that realization? I'm curious.
it
I mean, it's obvious, but how'd you come to that when you in the game of private equity?
you know what happened? It was actually during COVID. I started asking people for money. People have made a lot of money for me. Title companies, brokers, big commissions, very friendly to me because they want to sell me on the next deal.
Yeah.
Then during COVID, I said, hey, I started for the first time. It's very humble, by the way. It's very different asking for money for an investment for a for-profit than saying, hey, for the first time in my life, I'm asking money for a nonprofit. You're not going to get anything from this except goodwill. And I'd call those same people in the industry, and they were really hesitant to give at first. And then I said to them, what do you think the success of your business is based on, Mr. Broker, Mr. Title Company, Mr. Roofer? Like, what do you think the basis is? And then I started asking these questions, and most of their common answer was, well, it's me doing great customer service to the owners of apartment buildings. That's how I make a living. And then I kept asking the question because a lot of people told me no, they didn't want to donate to apartment residents during Corona. These people who couldn't afford a $500 emergency, who didn't have insurance, they didn't want to help them out. We knew they were like struggling with rent. We knew they had no medical insurance. This was a pandemic, and they were like, well, we can't do it now. We're cutting costs right now. It's a pandemic, and we really have to really focus on marketing to the owners. And so everybody got it wrong. When I asked the question, who do you think your customer is? Nobody would say it's the renters. They thought their customers were the general con. Like, they thought it was everyone else. I'm like, no, guys, you have this wrong. Your customer is that person who pays that $800 or $900 of rent. And collectively, when they pay their rent, then groups like yourself or MySoup who own buildings can pay you. But if those renters don't pay me, I can't pay you. So it seems to me it would really behoove all of us in our industry to really make sure that these renters are well taken care of, because I think the health of our industry and our livelihood depends upon them. So it came actually out of failure of me asking for money and being told no a lot, quite frankly.
And been going, you guys are totally missing the point here. Is that what it was?
To this day, one of my goals, the industry totally misses the point. And it happens a lot of industries.
Yeah.
We're human beings. We don't put the connections together.
What I'm curious about, JP, is I'd love to take it back a little bit, because you come from, I like to always say entrepreneurship, and people say, I do real estate or I do tech. And I say entrepreneurship is like being an artist. You just have to pick what your canvas is. And mine happens to be that. But when we talk about real art, you come from a creative industry.
Right, Dale.
There's two things. How did you, or even why did you want to go into real estate of all things when you came from, I don't know if you've talked about it, enough on your podcast, what you really were doing before.
Yeah.
What made you want to go into real estate? Because again, when I told my story, I would have to go through, I was 32 years old and going through, living through hell while my friends have own houses and this and that, and I have nothing. And, it's a little messed up mentally sometimes, but what made it for you to want to go into real estate?
Our story is not that different. I was, I had a great job. I was vice president of family entertainment at Sony Pictures, but it was a prestigious job. It was great when I was single. You know, it had some street cred, being in a movie studio and being able to like, you know, eat at the fancy dining rooms and fly around the world. But the real thing, to be honest, is I wanted some financial freedom. Yeah, and I knew that I was a well-paid employee. I loved it. It was very creative, and actually leaving it was very painful.
When did you get that realization that, because a lot of times people, they've been conditioned to think, if I make 100, it's the craziest indoctrination. If I make $100,000 a year, I have made it. Even though if you look at it, it's never going to build you wealth. Only ownership is. But how did you learn it? Did someone tell you? Where did that realization come from?
You and I also share something in common. You were telling me your story earlier about when you were young. About, I want to hear more about your grandmother and your father.
Okay.
So one thing that my family did for me when I was young is they told me that I was special. I've noticed a lot of successful people, if you feel like you are special, and I think it's one of the greatest things a parent can do. And special doesn't have to mean you're better than other people. It just means that whoever you are, it has a special energy. And for some reason, I just believed it.
Yeah.
And yet, evidence-wise, like, you know, I was single till I was 36 years old. I got married. Like, my friends were making more money than me. Like, I was taking great at Sony, but it wasn't like I was making, you know.
Yeah.
And so, even during the time when, and especially in my 20s, I was struggling. I hustled 14 different jobs. Just couldn't keep a job. Couldn't find my space. I think my friends probably thought I was a little lost back then.
Yeah.
Didn't really figure it out. When the thing called the internet came out, I kind of launched an internet company. Just people didn't think there'd ever be e-commerce. Like,
right.
It wouldn't work, you know?
No, people think, why would I give up my credit card online? They're going to steal it. You know,
I'd walk around the biggest, how old I am. I'd the big ass. I was working for Sony. I'd call them sick, fly to New York with my big ass monitor and try to convince like stores to come on my website. Like, that's how crazy it was.
Almost like the guy in Pursuit of Happiness. Remember that movie?
It was very.
Is that like this story? Okay, gotcha.
And so there really wasn't a lot of evidence that I was special. I mean, wasn't making the money, wasn't there. I didn't have like 19 hot women like on my door wanting to marry me. So I think, wait a second, I'm single, you know. So I had this dream. My dream was to have $1 million by 30. At 30 years old, I was broke. Absolutely broke.
Yeah,
and
dude, there was literally the same goal I had. I swear to God. Did it knock you? Did you lose any self-esteem? Did it knock you off course? Or did you just go like, I keep going?
Well, it knocked me off course for a minute, but there's that resiliency, because when you think not to say you're special, but you think that you're actually here to do something.
Yeah.
There's a resiliency. Because a lot of people have asked me, JP, my gosh, how did you, like, in your mid-30s start a second career from nothing, like humble pie? I actually started working with my dad to learn how to do real estate, and he was retired. I was working in my childhood bedroom. So I'd gone from a movie studio.
So your dad was
with a balcony. Yeah, my dad was
okay.
Business. I did it as a kid.
Uh-huh.
I went to my dad from a balcony in a movie studio to working in my childhood bedroom on the phone, putting newspaper ads to get my first investors. And talk about humble pie. And I think if you don't have that well of resiliency, the evidence would have said to quit. Everything around me would just tell me quit. It was not easy. And it was really tough in the beginning.
So what was the breakthrough that came? What was the first deal? What was the first when you go, okay, finally there's a breakthrough here? Did it come gradually? Did you even notice that it came, or was it one big moment? What happened for you that sort of put turned the corner?
This is a great real estate story. This was the moment where I'm like, holy shit. And I was making a little bit of money, getting by, and putting gas in my shitty car. And I moved to Austin, and the weirdest thing happened when I was in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I was in line to get a drink. I was at the the Emmy Awards. I was at the Emmy Awards, you know, and I'm in my tux at the Emmy Awards. And this beautiful woman behind me starts like asking me questions. And I think she's actually flirting with me. It turns out she was trying to sell a movie project. I found out later, but I actually helped her because I worked for Sony. So she had a dog film. Little did I know that her husband was the mayor of a big town in Austin, Texas. So here's the crazy thing. I help her. I get Miramax to buy her documentary. She says, what do I owe you? I'm a Hollywood guy. I'm just a Hollywood guy. And I've never told the story before. And I go, you owe me nothing. I go, just pay it forward. Pay goodwill forward.
Yeah. And
that was it. And they got their film by Miramax. Big deal. Little did I know 2 years later, and I was going to quit the film business, go move to Austin, Texas. I became friendly with her husband.
Yeah.
The first week I get here, I get a phone call. It's Sunday morning. JP, come meet me right away in a restaurant. in the middle of nowhere, in this rural part of Austin, Texas. He looks up, I said, what am I doing here on a Sunday in the middle of a field? He says, you see this field here? In 2 years, there's going to be a large freeway here. You see all this land? We need to own this land or sell this land because you're going to have, this, by the way, is a major freeway right now. He's like, and the reason why I'm telling you this, I'm going to do you a favor. You did me a favor 2 years ago in Hollywood. You got my film made. Now it's my turn to repay you. I'm just going to tell you how to make a lot of money on your first deal. Tie up this land. I'm going to show you what to do. And he did.
Wait, but before we get to how we did, because there's a lot of things that happen here. What did you think in your mind when he said that? Did you believe him? Did you think it was crazy? Did you believe you could actually do it? What was the first thought that came to your head?
Was just believe I'm like, this is crazy.
But did you believe that this is possible? You were like, was it a crazy, like, oh my God, this is exciting, this is going to happen? Or was it, he's crazy, I don't really believe. Okay.
Because I had a lot of years of things, not disappointments happening where I did make the $1 million at 30. You know, I had so many disappointments that I learned the language of don't get too excited.
Yeah. Yes.
So it took me a long time to learn how to not.
Okay. So you were at that point where you go, okay, you're not too emotionally attached to it. If it happens, it's cool. If not, whatever. Right. Yeah. Okay.
So then I tie this land.
You tied his land up.
I put the land under contract.
How did you do that? I think because there's a lot of real estate people out here, because I know people always come and ask me, and then there's a common topic among people in the beginner real estate community, if you will. I don't even know if you call it that, but they go, how did you get your first deal? Yeah. So, and then they go, well, like I told you, I put some money together. I saved up $500 every single week until I got to a number where I could put it, so on and so forth. How did you lock it down? Did you have to put up money? Did you have to source? How did you have to put proof of
nobody
funds?
knew who I was. I was the guy from California. Nobody knew anything about me.
So how'd you do it?
So, and by the way, everyone told me, don't do it. Everyone told me, don't tie this land up. The owner is a shark. He's the smartest guy. He's affiliated with the Dallas Cowboys, like one of the wealthiest people. He's going to crush you, California boy.
Yeah.
You're a fresh meat. You're going to get crushed.
Yeah.
So I did it anyways. So here's how I did it. They said, you need $50,000 to tie up this $5 million deal. I didn't have $50,000 to tie up that deal. So I did exactly what you did. I called for a partner. And so I had a mentor in Los Angeles during my Hollywood days. Yeah. I said, would you lend me $50,000 and be my 50-50 partner on this deal?
Yeah.
Crazy, right? So here's how this goes.
So what did he say?
What's that?
What did he say? You said, did you lend me?
What I couldn't believe? He said yes right away without hesitation. He goes, JP, he's like, I've watched you for a while now. You're smart. You'll protect my money. I trust you. And by the way, that blew me away because it's very hard to ask people. I go ask for 50 grand. I've got no track record. I'm in Austin, Texas. And he said, here's the 50 grand. Here's how the story gets crazier, by the way. The number got a lot larger. So then I thought everything was going well. Somebody makes me an offer. It's actually from a Jerry Jones from the Cowboys. Somebody comes and makes me an offer, and I get to walk away and make a pretty good, more money than I've ever made by just selling them the land. It's called assigning your contract, where I could just assign my contract and make a profit for assigning my contract.
To Jerry Jones, or was it Jerry?
Yeah, it was one of his guys. I can't.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
Because they knew the freeway was coming.
Yeah.
Everyone knew the freeway. This was like a good old boy. There's like.
Oh, so you got it and locked it up, and you can sell it because a lot of people.
I got the $50,000 from my friend.
So you locked it up, and then you got it at a good price, and you could. When people talk about a signing contract, just break it.
So I got it at a horrible price. I was going to get crushed.
Yeah.
But apparently, I think this is my friend who helped me. He's like, tell this guy that you have a land under contract. Call this guy.
Make the money. And
so he's helping me every step of it because I didn't ask for money. I just did him a favor and said, pay it forward.
Yeah.
He wanted to pay it forward to make sure I made money.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
That is crazy.
He literally was just, I was like, he was telling me what to do, who to call. I made all these calls, and these were big wigs and big players in Texas real estate. I'm like,
were you intimidated?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like the new kid from California, right? So then, and everyone's telling me I'm being crushed, I'm being had, that you're being played. You don't even know you're being played. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. So here's how it goes down. The day before, so they put up money to do the contract. I assume they actually paid me $50,000 to say, you're good. Then they called me and said, can I get an extension? We can come through and close this tomorrow to close this contract. Now, at this point, the good old boy who I bought the land from was pissed because he thought he was taking me for a ride. And it turns out I was making a big profit off of him. And there was no way he was going to let a new guy from California make money on his deal. His pride was there. No way. He was going to crush me. He yelled at me, said, "You're never going to make money on me. I'm going to crush you and take you down. There is no way, if you don't come tomorrow and close this deal, I will crush you and not sell this to you." That's how emphatic he was, because he did not like the fact that some new guy can make money.
Wow.
So now I'm in a weird situation because I wasn't prepared to close this deal. I didn't have the money. I didn't have a bank loan. I didn't have cash.
And how much was the total deal? Because
It was about $4.5 million.
$4.5 million. Okay. Yes.
So here's how it gets weird. So I have a day left, and I'm about to get crushed because this guy was not joking. He is verbally.
So he's like, "I'm taking your 50. Was the 50K was hard?
Yeah. Because I'm taking your money.
Yeah.
I don't care, whatever.
And the guy that you got the 50K from said, "You will protect my money," and now you're going,
So
"Oh
I
my
have
God."
to call him
Yeah.
and say, his name is Robert. I said, "Robert, we're in a bad situation here.
Oh my God.
I wasn't prepared to close this thing. I assumed they were going to close, and now they're not going to close. We may lose $50,000. So here's what he said. This goes back to what you were saying. He goes, "Well, what are the other options?" I go, "Well, we could buy it, I guess, ourselves. Seems like other people want it. Maybe we just buy it ourselves, but we don't have a bank loan." He says, "Well, how much cash would that take to buy it?" I go, "Well, that would take $4.5 million to buy it." He says, well, do you want to do that?" And I said, "Oh, is that even a possibility?" He goes, "I could wire you $4.5 million. And I said, "Yeah, but we have no time. I can't make a contract between us. Like, I have no time." Like, he goes, "JP, I trust you. This is your play. I trust you. Just send me an email that I'm wiring you $4.5 million and what it's going to, and we're good." And you know what he did? He wired me $4.5 million.
Really?
So here's
Wait. Didn't that take days to come through?
a wire takes hours.
Okay. Well, it's okay. All right.
So here's where the story gets.
That day is okay.
They wired me the next morning.
Right.
We had at 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, the contract expired.
Right.
He wires me the money at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Jerry Jones's guy catches. Everyone thinks I'm going to get crushed.
Yeah.
They're going to crush the California boy.
Yep.
Do the deal around me. That's the plan.
Yep.
Right? That they can make the big money.
Yeah.
So they catch wind because I call the title company and say, "Oh, I'm planning to come in to close. Have the paperwork. It's not going to be an assignment. I'm going to buy it myself. I've got $4.5 million. Let me send you the $4.5 million." So I send $4.5 million to the title company. Everyone's freaking out and they panic.
Like, how did he?
California boy has $4.5 million. They run on their private jet. It's now like 4 o'clock. They're in their private jet and said, No. We were just kidding. We really want to buy this from you." And I said, "Well, no, you don't have time. The deal closes at 5. I'm going to close with my own money.
Yeah.
Sorry, you just lost your money. You just lost this deal. And you insulted me."
Yeah.
And nobody believed me. So I pull up at 4:45 and there's the contract for me to sign it. Jerry Jones's guy pulls up in his private jet and runs, sprints. And the grandfather clock is 3 minutes before 5 o'clock and begs me, "JP, please sell this to me. I'll pay you another $150,000 right now if you just sell this to me." So what do I do? Calm down. You've insulted me. My child is right behind me. I missed dinner with my baby. I'm very annoyed with you. And that was not, the whole thing has been really disrespectful. And I call Robert. I was like calling I walk in the other room. I said, "Robert, do I buy this thing for $4.5 million of your money? Or do I sell it to them?" We walk away with a biggest check or whatever. For him and me, we both walked away with big checks.
Yeah.
"Do you want to walk away with a big check? Or do you want to buy this thing?" He said, "JP, what do you want to do?"
And what did you say?
So here's what I decided to do.
Number one. Okay, I got a question. What made him even? Why is he so blindly trusting you in this process?
He got to know me for a while. He was my mentor. He was my mentor to get into private money lending. And he was my mentor. So he saw me. We had many lunches together.
Okay.
So he got to know me in California.
Yeah.
Over many, many lunches as I was doing my career. He saw something in me.
So the 4.5. So he trusts your judgment, obviously, and he goes, So what do you want to do? That's what he said. And what did you say?
So then I call my lawyer. I'm like, "What should I do?" My trusted lawyer. My lawyer's like, "Look, JP, you now have some of the most powerful in Texas freaking out of their minds right now. There's 2 contracts on the desk, one for me to buy it and one to assign it. Yeah. Everyone is freaking out. They've all been had by the new California boy. But here's the thing. You could twist them and make another $1 million if you twist them hard. Right now, you could just tell them you want another $1 million. But he says also, you've been in Austin for 2 weeks. You're new here and you've got a reputation to protect. Yeah. Don't become the guy, even though you can use your sword right now and walk away with another $1 million. But don't be that guy, because you're going to get a bad reputation. Austin's a small town,
Yeah.
and you're going to get known as the aggressive guy from LA. He's like, reputation is everything. He's like, take the 150 from them, shame them, take the 150,000 more, and let that be your first deal in Austin, Texas. And that's what I did.
So what you did.
Yeah.
And you walked. Wow.
You made
That's a crazy story.
Robert made a nice check. I made my first big check, my first reasonably good 6-digit check.
Yeah.
It was a really, really big deal for my career.
And what did you do with it?
The money?
Yeah. What did you do with the 150? Now that you got your big deal,
Zero.
because that's for a lot of people when they get their first little bit of money, they go, wait a minute. Some it goes bad. Some they leverage into something more. What did you do?
So I'm a car guy. I've dreamed of having nice cars, and I had a nice car. I like German cars. I like fast cars.
Yeah.
So I had my eye on a BMW 645 convertible.
Yeah.
I thought one day, but even when I never, like, how the hell would I ever afford that? And all of a sudden I could afford it. I bought one. Beautiful, great convertible. And you know what happened as it was being delivered to me?
What?
I panicked. I totally panicked.
Why'd you panic?
My brain had dreamed about it for so many years, but never thought that I could deserve or afford to have a car that nice, that expensive. And I'm like, what if I had to drive that car and people think I'm an asshole? What if I drive that car and, it derails my marriage? Like, my brain was going into all those horrible things that could happen by having abundance, because I had no framework around abundance.
So how did you overcome that? How did you deal with that?
Driving that damn car for a while,
And
going through my fears and realizing, like, wait a second, I'm driving this car. No one thinks I'm an idiot. Like, no one's mad at me. I'm still married. I still happily married. Nothing's crumbling. My life's not crumbling.
Right.
It's okay. But you know what it really comes down to? Trusting yourself that you're not that jerk. You're not that a-hole. You're not that egotistical guy, but you're actually a source. It's one thing to say I'm a source for good, but now when you have money, you're being tested. Are you really a source for good, or are you a lot of talk? Are you whitewashing this? Now's your time to come clean. And it's scared the daylights out of me.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's scary.
So scary. Now my character is being tested.
And that is, remember when
As you say, it brings me back. I can feel it, man.
It's like when you go back to, again, it's so much is governed by our desire to preserve our ego, and we don't want to feel like we're a piece of crap,
Right.
and then stuff like that. And that goes back to what I mentioned, that I go, if I have X, will I compromise myself? Will I lose myself? Will I lose my character? Because the first time with my first deal, remember I had nothing, and I would go to nightclubs. They would humiliate me. They wouldn't let me in. Girls would talk funny to me. I said, because in my head, I was, because again, even if I operate from a space, or I try to anyway, of selflessness and kindness, but at the same time, I have confidence in my capacity to do things. I'm the same person now that I was then. The external reality just hadn't found out yet. Right. So my pride is freaking hurt, and so I thought to myself, I'll go to a loan officer. I said, I can refinance my property. He said I could take out something like $300,000, and he goes, and I go. The first thing that came to my head was, I'm visualizing it. I wrote this in my book even, that I'm wearing a robe like Caesar, with a golden thing around my head, and a wad of cash, smacking the bouncers that disrespected me, pouring champagne on the girl. And I said, oh my God, keep it. I'm just gonna keep going. And then I said, okay, all right, let me stay away from that, because again, I didn't want to get to that place. I said, okay, all right. And it is clearly just
like everybody who didn't believe in me in my 20s, I wanted to shame them.
Exactly.
Look at me now.
Yeah, look, see what it. But you know what? It's human. This is human nature. And then because you didn't act on that, I didn't act on that. But you do it for more, and then you pay for it, like you said. You show, hey, I did this. You can do it too.
Right.
Look, it really is. But so, anyways, that's what I'm fascinated by. I'm fascinated by what you share right there. So then you got the new car, and then that went away. Do you think that there's a lot to be said for, or how I should put it, how much do you think success or elevating, I like to say you elevating consciousness, as you become a little bit more successful, and that fear, all those irrational fears go away? How much can people, how I guess I'm asking, how do you think people can become more successful just by working on those belief systems that they have? And what are some tips that you can give them to deal with that? Does my question make sense? Yeah. What are some things that you would tell somebody? What can you do to get rid of those? Because it really is what prevents a lot of stuff. And we can rationalize all we want to and give us all the noble reasons why we're not doing something, but it could simply be if we just don't feel like we deserve it, or we feel like we're nasty people. What's something that you can do to get around that?
Someone said to me, I've been mentoring more and more people. And
Yeah.
one of the things that really comes up a lot is kind of similar questions to this. And I really wish someone said to me early on when I was struggling, they said, JP, trust yourself, your ship will come in. And I really wish I could have, if I look back, I don't have a lot of regrets when people say, what are your regrets? I'm like, one thing I really wish is I would have believed in myself more in every way. Like when someone said, no matter what, it's going to be okay. Well, they weren't saying to me, you're definitely going to make X amount of dollars, or you're going to find a wife, or you're going to have a great life. They were saying all that, but none of that. There was no guarantees, but it's like the quality of your spirit of who you are, something magnificent will be born out of that. Something bigger than you can even imagine. And I don't exactly know what it is. And it's really hard to trust that. When you think that you have to control everything, you have to make everything happen, which I was that guy. So if you're coming from a place that you have to make everything happen, it's really hard. If you can really believe, I know you hear it in church and temples, hey, have faith in God. I know we hear it. It's faith in God, it's faith in spirit, and it's faith in yourself. And it's all the same, by the way. God, spirit, and yourself we're all the same.
How do you have that faith if everything in your reality in your life tells you contradicts what you're trying to believe?
You have to take the belief that you're special, you're a spark of God, and you deserve it because you're here to serve.
Mention that thing that's magnificent. So, and I think that's actually, I think that could be a really cool thing for people to walk away with. If there's any type of things they should walk away with, what do you think that magnificent thing is for you? You mentioned it.
Yeah.
You've gotten to a certain place. Which I guess I'm trying to guide the question here.
Okay.
But and when you get to a certain place and you just like in school, you finish 11th grade and it was hard at first and you master it, get to 12th grade. You get to life tends to be similar that way. You master one domain and then you get to the next level and you realize you thought you knew everything, you knew nothing at all.
Yeah.
So it's like you're one place now and clearly you're going to go far beyond it. But what is that magnificent thing to you? What does that look like for you?
That's a good question. I feel like I want to be in my magnificence an example for people.
To do what?
Righteousness towards each other. I feel like the word that just came from me was like, it's like a feeling of righteousness, not because I'm so good or because I've achieved X, Y, or Z, but that we all have the same thing. It's really just being as a spark of divinity. We all deserve to be here. We all deserve to be happy. Life doesn't have to be, you're going to have your challenges, but life can be magnificent. But you got to lead from love, got to lead from optimism, love for your fellow man, not just your girlfriend or not just your husband or your family, but maybe even like loving a stranger. You got to lead from love. And so I think for some reason, my magnificence is taking that idea of leading from love and bringing it through capitalistic structures. So how do we take this energy of money and this energy of love, which is a deep, deep emotion, and then this thing called currency, which is this energy, and how do we create the best omelet we can for abundance for people, for joy, that they should know the true meaning of it, which isn't collecting a bunch of stuff and throwing it in storage or showing off your bright green Lamborghini, although that could be fun, but to really give it to the next person, to pay it forward in your God-given way. Or you're making it up with your way with Tribe. You're helping hopefully 100 million people rise beyond poverty with this idea that using money for good, for people who say they can't do it, and you're saying, yes, you can. I chose residents and apartment workforce housing residents because that was put in front of me. I don't think I was born to help workforce housing residents. It's what became in front of me because when I called a bunch of old wealthy people and said, help me, and they said no, I woke up to the realization. So I'm like, hell yeah, now I'm going to help these people. I see that people aren't evil. They're just blind. They're not evil. They're doing their best they can. They just get blinded. Maybe we can be a force of light to unblind them. Would you say that's true?
It's funny when I talk about my mission, and again, I grew up in Denmark. There's next to no corruption, next to no crime. And people only do bad. It's not out of necessity. It's out of some pathology. But people innately, I don't believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I truly deep down don't believe people are bad. I think when you're hungry, don't have anything,
Yeah.
ethics can become compromised, they can become normalized, and then train goes off the tracks, right? You see ugly things and you do ugly things. So it's all tied to, am I hungry? Do I have? There's no homelessness really in Denmark because the government will take care of you. I'm not saying that's the model to adopt here, but we call it a welfare system over there. But I do believe we can create micro welfare systems for our immediate family, having those values intact, thinking about how do we set up the next generation. And when you think about in North America, the lower rung of the socioeconomic hierarchy is inhabited by people of color. So a lot of the class things are tied to that, obviously. And as an extension of that, there's not a culture of ownership in those communities, but there's a culture of consumption. So that's what creates the wealth gap. So what I really am just trying to do is just to create awareness around the importance of investing. And real estate is the number one, I believe it's the largest asset class in the world in the trillions. And it's created more millionaires than any other. There's two statistics that I look at. There's one is from Andrew Carnegie. I don't know if it's real or not, but I've seen it. It says 90% of millionaires are made from real estate. And if you think about it, you buy a house, have it 20, 30 years, and it ends up having $1 million of equity. It is true. If you walk down the street in New York, for someone that bought a brownstone 20-some years ago, it has $1 million of equity, and more than likely unless they were being silly with the asset. So
Well, also, we know that renters or homeowners have 40 times more net worth than renters.
So there you go. And that is that is what creates as the building block for wealth right there. So I just try to get them in the door with $100 so that not that $100 in and of itself will become $1 million. That's not how it works. You have to continue to invest. And ideally, you have to go out and buy for yourself, and you have to think about the next generation. I always like to say, I look at things operate life from a perspective with a 48-hour urgency, but with a 10-year horizon. So I think and plan in 10 years, but that's the macro, and the micro is 48-hour urgency. That's why you said, can you be there Thursday? Yeah, that fits my schedule perfectly. Had you said Friday, I said, ask me tomorrow. you know, so that's the thing is it's to think long term. You can still be, I believe, of course, as long as you protect your downside, you can act swiftly and decisively, and if you think long term, protect your downside, you can do that. So that's what I try to tell people, because again, I'm just trying to extend the middle class just a little bit, just because there's enough for everybody. There really truly is. Not everybody wants, like you said, the cup is full at 100,000. Not everybody needs to have $10 million, $20 million. It's not the point. It's just to have something that you can pass down. They always like to throw around this term generational wealth, but it really starts with one person that decides, it's not just about me. And it keeps going back to this. It's not about me.
It's not about me. Generational wealth, it's not about me.
It's not about, and that's with everything in life. And once you adopt that, and I believe, do people talk about mental health, spiritual health, physical health? I believe in financial health, because a lot of those trouble that come from it comes from stress related to financial health.
Totally.
And then it just trickles down in a very sinister way. So giving people the pathway, the tools, but more importantly, the belief that they can do it. Not even the belief, the conviction that they can do it. And that goes back to your point about faith. Faith comes from actually believing. How do you believe? Seeing is believing for a lot of people. So the more you see it, unfortunately, the more you see it, the more you just accept it and take it for granted that this is something that can be done. And I think that's what I do in a nutshell. And I see you doing it, but just it's just in such a different but empowering light, just telling your story, because it's probably the most non-private equity blueprint I heard.
I'm traditional.
I read Steven Schwartzman's from Blackstone. I read his story and how he started with this. He said, well, I'm going to do $100 million fund. And I'm thinking to myself, because like you said, we all have a number. I call it a wealth baseline. And at one point it was 100 and it was 1,000, and I could track it as I was saving up for the property. Then it went into a baseline of 1 million, and I said, okay, there's a shift that needs to happen here. This guy started with that, and I'm not worried about how he got the perception of his capacity to just start there, but just get there, and then you can go beyond that. But even if you can't get there, you get to whatever number it is, and then that's taken for granted. That's the baseline for the next generation.
Which is why the $100 makes sense from your model. Start with $100.
Start $100, save up.
Go to $200. Go to $500. Go to
$1,000. And if you can make 1,000, well, do that 10 times, and you have 10,000. Okay, now you have enough to where you can actually buy a multi-family.
What you're doing is you're just raising the baseline slowly, especially for people who've never seen abundance and have only seen scarcity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I don't overwhelm people with jargon. I would tell stories and tell little lessons, if you will, and I would teach them. For instance, I had this video that I did. So I said, here's how 500 can become $1 million. I said, save up 500 for 6 months, then pool it with 10 other people, then using leverage. Now, and I said, and you buy something that needs a little help getting fixed up, and before you know it, it appraises at $1 million. This is how 500 becomes $1 million. And when I walked them through the steps, oh yeah, makes sense. But in reality, what I taught them was budgeting. These are the terms: budgeting, leverage. I taught them about I taught about the tenants in common concept. Right. I taught them about a private GPLP model. But I'm not saying it like that because I'm not trying to. Right. I don't want to scare them, but I'm basically teaching them private equity. But in
story, which is really all those things. This is the story of how to do it.
Exactly, and that's how I think you can reach people, and that's why I think when you talk about how at 32. And all your friends are crushing it, so you think, and you're feeling lost, and there's me and Martin have had these conversations where because you're not always going to have a great day or feel great about yourself or feel motivated, and I just want people to understand that also, that you're not going to feel motivated every day. I'm sure you don't feel motivated every day. Maybe you don't feel at your best every day. Sometimes you may feel bad or sad, what have you, but that doesn't change the fact that what needs to be done still needs to be done because it's bigger than you. It's bigger than you. So yes, we can feel bad and this and that, but we still, and not motivated, but that's where discipline kicks in and allows us to still move ahead and understand that it's bigger than all of us. So yeah, agreed.
Well, we are losing battery. I heard the battery go off, and we're losing light.
Yes.
But I could go on. In fact, we didn't really get a chance to talk about your company. NYCE.
We can do that next time I come out here.
Tribe, so we will save that for another episode.
Next time I come out, we'll talk about that. We can talk about that. I think more importantly is that people got to hear the perspective. So that's
well, I've never quite had an episode quite like this. This was just going down meaningful channels together. I'm just loving it. I see you, I know you, and I one of the things I remember on Thursday night was I see you, and I thank you for everything that you're doing, and I thank you for inspiring me to go bigger.
And we're going to blow it up. My brother. Thank you.